The 3DS has had a long 7 years and still is used by many fans to this day, but at its $200 price tag, does it hold up still, especially compared to the $200 Switch Lite now out there? Well, let's see in our first category. But before that, let me just say, of course, this is a 2DS XL. I don't have a 3DS on me right now, but that should make a difference because you can't even see 3D on YouTube. So anyways, so clearly right off the bat you have 2 screens and 3D. It's not really as exciting as it was in 2011, and most people turn it off, and that's why the 2DS XL really exists, and that really makes me wish that they focused more on the graphics instead of trying to make it 3D. But once again, this was 2011, and back then, having 3D on a TV or on a device was really cool. The Switch Lite has a 3 to 7 hour battery life, while the 3DS has a 3.5 to 7 hour battery life, so obviously the 3DS's battery life is still long because it doesn't have as powerful games to process like the Switch has. And that can also be seen with its display. That 4.8-inch screen only has 240 resolution, while the Switch's 5.5-inch display has a 720p. The 3DS/2DS is rocking a 3D camera, not the best thing to be taking photos with, but it's more being used for its AR features. Games are clearly important to any console, and the Lite definitely doesn't disappoint, as it has over 1,800 games with many more well on their way. From first party to major third parties to indie developers, there's something for everyone. While on the other hand, the 3DS is almost near 1,300 games. The reason that the Lite has more, even though the Switch has only been in the market for around 2.5 years, is because remember that it's a more powerful console, and it's more looked at as Nintendo's main console instead of a handheld, while the 3DS has always been Nintendo's secondary console. Because of this, you don't have that many developers. Although the 3DS does have an advantage, and that is that it's backwards compatible with DS games. So that library of 1,800 games on the DS can combine with the 3DS, and now technically the 3DS has a library of 3,000 games. The main difference though when it comes to the games themselves is that although the Switch has a lot of great first-party games, it's a lot more tailored to be for people who enjoy more than just Nintendo's games, whether it be from major third-party developers or indie developers. The 3DS though doesn't really have that much of a huge library from the third-party developers. And for the titles that it does have, it doesn't have that many major titles that you would see like Doom. Of course, when being compared to the Switch Lite, one of the biggest third-party games would have to be Minecraft, and one of the biggest indie games would have to be Shovel Knight. But the 3DS still does have some great first-party games that the Switch has, like Smash Bros and Mario Kart. It's also good to take note that the 3DS does have a bigger library of virtual console games than the Switch does, as I've mentioned before. So if you're more of the classic gamer that wants the NES games, the Game Boy games, the SNES games, then definitely the 3DS for now. Nintendo is trying to do this on the Switch, but they're doing this with an online subscription service, and people are not really fans of it. I hope that Nintendo will reconsider and do virtual console. For now, the closest thing we have is something called Arcade Archives, which is done by a developer named Hamster. It's basically the virtual console, except the games cost a lot more than they do on the 3DS. In conclusion, it sort of feels like the 3DS is the more portable option between the Switch Lite. Even though both of them are priced at $200, unless you got the 2DS. The main difference really does come down to power and games. The 3DS does have some more classic games like Ocarina of Time, which the Switch right now doesn't, as well as being very convenient and something that you can put in your pocket and go. The Lite is also a pocket-friendly device as well, which I totally didn't expect when I first saw it, honestly. The only thing though, compared to the 3DS, because it's a clamshell design, I wouldn't feel comfortable putting anything in it. It is still in terms of length longer than a 3DS, and compared to a phone, it is still bigger. So it sort of just takes over your pocket, but you can still bend your leg, if that makes sense. It is more tailored towards the gamers that want a little bit more from a device, in terms of power and games. But if you're someone that's just looking for the basics, the 3DS is perfect. It seems a lot more easier to pull out on the subway and just play some Mario 3D World. The games on the 3DS also are very, light. What I mean by that is that they're a lot more simple than you would find on the Lite. Things like Mario 3D World are easy to just take out, play, finish around, and then put away. While playing something like Mario Odyssey is something that you get a lot more invested in, as it's not your conventional side-scroller. If you're a Lite player that cares not about the display or any intense games, then the 3DS/2DS is perfect. But if you're someone that's looking for a little bit more, the Lite is perfect. And don't forget that the Switch Lite has a life ahead of itself, while the 3DS is slowly on its way out. Nintendo doesn't really talk about the 3DS at all lately, and developers aren't really showing interest anymore. In that case, I would really suggest getting a Switch Lite. At this rate, the only person that should be getting a 3DS is someone who either is a collector or who doesn't care about the new games and is happy with the game list already available, which of course includes the huge selection of virtual console games. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.